Welcome back, everybody. It's Joe Solari with the Business of Writing, and today I have a special guest, Chris Kennedy. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So we just were together at 20 Books. You've recovered from that?
I have. I'm about back on East Coast time after 2 days of having weird sleep schedules and falling asleep when I should be awake, and vice versa. I'm pretty close.
Any big takeaways from the conference?
I think one of the things that I took away was, the growth of audio and in some good ways of maybe targeting some different market sections, maybe get some extra advertising into there going forward.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that and some great folks there. Well, the main reason I was hoping for you to come on and talk about and share with the guests that watch the show is, you were one of the kind of folks that have put together the whole idea of using a universe and anthologies. I don't know if you were the first, but you're an early adopter.
I was nowhere near the first to do a shared universe.
Yeah.
They had the Thieves World, as when I was growing up.
Okay.
Maybe not super young, but there were a lot of different authors that were writing into that, and it's been done before. It just hasn't really been done that much recently. I think that a lot of the authors sometimes aren't willing to share their universe sometimes for a lot of different reasons, and also a lot of times authors don't want to go play in someone else's world. Because they're worried about losing their people or maintaining their own series. But there's a number of different reasons why people might not want to play in your universe, as well as why you may not want to open it up to them. And we can go further into that if you'd like. But it hasn't been done a whole lot. However, after the success that I've had, I think that some other people have started looking at it, and there were other people that were doing it too. So
Sure.
in different genres and such.
Well, maybe to get started, why don't you share a little bit about like how you started this whole thing up with Mark and the whole idea, and walk us through a little bit of the history.
Okay, sure. So several years ago, I met Mark at a convention, and he approached me and said, "Hey, I'd like to do some work with you." And I said, "Hey, that's great, but I'm already doing my own thing." And see, there you go. I was already doing my own thing. And I told him, "Hey, let me get this done, and I'll sure, I'd love to work with you." And he thought I was just putting him off, but I really wanted to finish what I was working on. And I happened to catch up with him the next year at the same con. And I'd finished that, and I was looking to do something else. And I said, "Hey, so tell me about this thing." And he said, "Well, I've kind of already started it." I was like, "Okay, cool." He says, "But you can still join me." All right. And he had already written the first 20,000 words or something of the first book, which turned out to be Cartwright's Cavaliers. And he gave it to me, and I read it that night and stayed up past my bedtime because I was really engaged by it. And I was like, "Wow, this is really cool. Yeah, we need to do this. I need to do this." So, I hooked up with him the next day, and, in inappropriate tradition said, "Hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but I really loved it, and now I have to do this." And he went, "What?" So we then went to the bar because all good book deals are built in a bar, and we talked about it. And he had the Four Horsemen, the four mercenary companies set up, and I said, "Okay, that's great, but you do those two, and I'll do these two, but by the way, I'm going to change these to somebody else." Because I had some stories just from reading his. I was like, "Wow, wouldn't it be cool if?" And oh yeah, over there. So I wanted to bring in a couple different units with that existed historically to kind of flesh that out. So we put together the first four books and put out the first one, and it did really well. Put out the second one, it did well. The third one did well. Fourth one did well. And we had already outlined where we wanted the main series to go. And so that didn't give us as much opportunity to expand the universe as we wanted. So we decided to do an anthology to flesh out the universe, and asked some of our author friends, hey, would you like to write a short story in the universe? And a lot of them had read it and said yeah. And I was hoping to get 14. I got 42. So
what year was that?
That was 17.
Okay.
I think. And so that anthology became 3 anthologies. It went from being a fistful of credits to for a few credits more, and the good, the bad, and the murk. And some of those, well, all of the stories were great, but some were so great that the reader said, hey, I need to know more. Tell me about this peacemaker. Tell me about this race of cat-like assassins. Tell me, and we had hoped that would be the case. And so those people, we said, hey, how about giving us a full-length book? And they were like, okay, sure. Because, they had seen the anthologies doing well, and they had seen what we were doing and really liked it. So they started writing books in the universe. And then we tied them into the main storyline going forward. We kept writing, Mark and I kept writing what we were, but then we brought them in and found ways to integrate them so that, they weren't just kind of hanging off over here with no reason for anybody to look at it. There was a reason to read it and buy it and include them as well, because they then became important to the story. So we did that, and now we've done seven different anthologies, and a number of those have spawned stories. The Peacemaker one has now spawned its own kind of mini storyline that is kind of going to go off on its own a bit and then tie back in. But I can't say when or where. I'll just say that it will be very, very important when they come back.
So could you talk a little bit about, what's involved in the work around anthologies and running a world? I know a lot of folks get real enamored with the idea of doing this, but you've been doing it for a while. And
I've now published 11, 12 anthologies. Including 7 in the Four Horseman Universe. And for everyone that wants to do it, I would say don't. It is a whole lot more work than what you would ever possibly think. There's just a lot that goes into it, and I say that facetiously. If you've got a great topic and for an anthology, then sure, do it. But there's an awful lot that goes into it. From getting the stories on time, because it's one thing to get a story written by an author. It's another thing entirely to try and get 14 authors to all produce at the same time. Even just life. My dog, my wife. I was sick.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that can go wrong in a person's life that trying to align all of those stories at once is challenging. Plus getting contracts from them and all the rest of the minutia that goes with publishing somebody else. But when it comes together, it can be very powerful, because you're hopefully bringing in 14-ish authors and having their readers look at it. So it hopefully is bringing new people to your world, as well as having some of your readers see these new authors, and get them readers too. I mean, it works both ways. It's beneficial to us to bring in new people to the Four Horseman universe, but it's also a way of getting our readers to take a look at them. We only use authors that we like and think provide a meaningful and really good story in the universe, and we've been very lucky with that. There are very few stories that we've included in the anthologies that at least a few readers haven't said, "Hey, when are we going to see more on that one?" And I think that's been pretty true all across the 7 anthologies we've done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I also know from us talking is not only, I know you've got a lot of great indie authors that are in this mix, but you're bringing in traditional folks too into some of your books and helping on the publishing side, helping publish some of those guys. So can you talk a little bit to like how you're mixing kind of the old and new ways? And
well, I think as we go down the road, a lot of the traditionally published authors are starting to go, I kind of see some utility in this whole self-publishing thing, and there isn't as much stigma on them, and wow, it looks like they're kind of making a lot of money. I want some of that. So
well, and just to inject, how many Dragon nominations have you had now in the universe?
In the universe, we've had for CKP, I've had I had 4, then 3. Yeah. So I've had total, I think 10 nominations for CKP.
So as far as things coming from fans, they're looking to Chris Kennedy Publishing for quality science fiction. So it's not like right.
Oh, absolutely. And those are across several of the imprints of CKP. So there's a number of sci-fi, and including the Four Horsemen. John Osborne's picked up some for his Reluctant Druid, which is urban fantasy. Mark Wandry's picked up 2 for Blood Moon Press with his zombie apocalypse books. So I intentionally am trying to provide a bunch of good stories across several genres. And based on the Dragon Awards, it appears to be working pretty well. Good.
Yeah, you were talking about how you're bringing traditionals in, and
yeah,
I just want to make sure we made that point. That
yeah, and actually I'm doing an alt history anthology. This is it's a series. And the 3rd book is just coming together right now, and it's got S.M. Sterling, David Weber, Kevin J. Anderson. So it's got a bunch of traditionally published authors and very, very successful traditionally published authors. Brad Torgerson, Sarah Hoyt. So we've got. I think between all of the authors, on the front cover of that, there are 7 Dragon Award winners, not finalists, but winners, in there. So that's pretty powerful. That says a lot about where the industry is going. I think when you can get that many traditionally published authors to play in your sandbox, and they do because it's been successful. The first couple anthologies in that series have done very well, and I think people are starting to take a look and go, hey, I wonder when the next one of those is going to come out, because I want in. So you could do a lot worse than having Taylor Anderson in an alt history book. Oh, by the way, he's in that one too, along with all those others. We were starting to run out of space on the front cover for putting all the names. The team and more, is a bunch of A-list authors almost too. Typically an anthology will have 4 or 5 A-list, 4 or 5 B-list, and 4 or 5 new authors. We didn't get very far down into the B's with this one. Just because there really is no longer that stigma of being self-published or indie published, or I actually make a difference between indie published and self-published. Indie is more along the traditional model, and does all of the things that a traditional publisher does.
Which is the other besides being an author yourself and managing that universe, you have Chris Kennedy Publishing, where you're publishing. You've got authors that you're publishing their work. So
I'm publishing about 15 different authors, primarily, that are doing most of their stuff either through me or, half. I've got a couple authors like Casey Azell that publishes both for me and for Bain. She's had another book or two also out with traditional publishing.
And you've done that too. You're publishing with yourself as well as you publish with traditional publishers also.
Right. I have a book coming out in about a year from Tor that I did with David Weber, which I'm really looking forward to. That one is just a great book. I heard David read the first chapter of it the other day, and I was like, "Oh, that's so awesome!" Of course, he wrote that part. I was like, "Read some of mine too." But
kind of on that point, like, how did you get, like, what got you jazzed about sci-fi, about writing it? And
I've always been a sci-fi, lover. I grew up reading sci-fi. I grew up in High Point, North Carolina, which is a smallish town, and I had read all of the sci-fi in the library. It was to the point where anytime they'd get something new, they knew just to call my mom. Because we'd be down there in 5 minutes to pick up the latest thing, it was very natural for me when I started writing to write sci-fi, because I know David Weber always says who you are as an author is based on who you read. I am a sci-fi author because that is pretty much most of what I read.
Well, and I think that's why so many indie authors are, doing well, is because they're coming from that place as a reader. So they're kind of writing to that gap in the library where there wasn't books, right? It's like,
right.
I've read everything. What's the book I wanted to read? Well, I'll write it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that the more you read in a certain genre, you kind of get the flow, kind of how books go and how stories are told, because it varies, by genre. And a lot of genres are very formulaic, especially some of the romance and mysteries of how they go. So having read a lot, you pick up on just kind of how that flow goes, which makes it a lot easier to write, I think.
For sure. So, what do you guys have planned for the universe coming up? What's kind of that you can share?
Well, we have a lot of great things in the universe that are coming. We've actually plotted out the next 3 series, so we know where the universe is going. We've allotted different authors to write different portions of it, and yet we've cut out a few pieces so that when that next author steps in and goes, "Hey, I would really like to write in the Four Horseman universe," we can say, "Okay, that's great. Here's this part." We just picked up John Osborne as a core author. We had 5 core authors writing in the universe. We're now up to 6 because we picked up John. John has done amazing. He has both a Frontiers book, which is the YA piece of the Four Horseman universe. We kept having readers saying, "Hey, this is great, but it's soldiers and sailors and some of the language I really don't want to give to some of my younger kids. When are you going to do something that I can give to the younger kids?" We started out a series of YA books that are a lot like the Heinlein juveniles that Heinlein wrote, which are phenomenal stories. The adults love them every bit as much as the kids, just less swearing. Anyway, John wrote a great one of those. He also has developed his own character, which came from an anthology. He wrote a short story, and we said, "This is great. We want more." And so he wrote a full-length story, and now that's become another full-length story, and and that's coming around and going to get tied in. And, that's just kind of how we roll with that. We want all the authors to be successful, and how you do that is to bring them in and, let them tell good stories.
So when you're doing one of these anthologies, how do you give them a topic, or how do you get them to get context for the universe and know what to
well
deliver?
we've done a couple. We've done some that are pretty much hey, tell a good story in the universe, which the box is this wide.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Bible that we send out to all the authors that say, here's these things, here's how the universe works, here's the weaponry, here's the politics, here's the different races,
Mm-hmm.
here's the things you cannot write about, because even though we allow people in the sandbox, we've marked out this little corner over here that's ours.
Mm-hmm.
Not because we're stingy or anything like that, but it's places that we know we're going with the arc,
Yeah.
and we just can't have anybody give away the arc before we get there.
Sure.
But others have been very targeted. The last one that came out was you had to write a story about the Depik, which are the cat assassins. They didn't tell the people what story to write, so you could tell any sort of assassin-y story you wanted, and then they tied it together. So typically, like I said, for anthologies, we try and go 4A list, 4B list, and just about every anthology we've done, we've given readers and young authors the ability to submit to it. The next anthology that we have currently is open for submissions, and we're going to take at least 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, young authors for it. Which for a lot of people it's been their first published or their first professional sale. That's where John Osborne started. He came in with a great story for the Four Horsemen, and then I picked up his urban fantasy as well, because I could see he writes a good story. So we try and reach back, help up the next folks,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's really important, and that's why we do it.
Now, have any of those folks come out of like the readership? Like they're
Oh, absolutely. Not only have well, I just picked up one of the readers here last week, who had written in the Four Horseman Universe and then sent me his own story that he'd been working on, and I was like, yep, I'm taking that one, because it's a really good story, and certainly the Four Horseman Universe gives people the ability to write in a universe where they don't have to do all of the world building, because a lot of the world building's done for them. They can concentrate on telling a good story, without getting hung up in the details, because the details are already out there, and the readers all know them. Which when you're just starting out, I think that is a bonus. Because some young authors can get tied up in that, and I need more of this, and I need more of this, and I need more of that, and by the time they're done, they've got half of the book is world building, and readers get bored. They read the first chapter, they're like, okay, I'll give you the first chapter, but not the second. Now I need good stuff. You got to get to the good stuff, and having the world building already done allows you to get to the good stuff sooner.
Sure. Now, the other thing I think is real interesting about what you guys are doing is you've got a very different strategy on how you promote the business. You're like out there pressing flesh with the fans. So
we do.
You want to talk a little bit about that and what you do at cons and the fan groups and mercenary clubs and all that?
Well, just about all of the authors in the universe are people that do sci-fi fantasy conventions. And certainly I do about 12 to 14 a year. which is probably too many because it represents less time writing. But that was kind of how I started. I was out there, meeting people, letting people be red shirts, writing them into books, like the old Star Trek red shirts that showed up for 5 minutes and then got killed.
Yeah, you only have to explain that to my wife.
Yeah. So we like to get out and do that. We are very interactive. We have a Facebook group for the Four Horseman Universe where, all of the authors are there and all of them comment. So, if you had a question on a certain aspect of it, you'll get it answered from the author. And most, all of the early books have the link in it. If you just search on Facebook, the number 4HU, you can find it and come join us. You don't even have to have read any of the books. You can come join us. But that's one way that we include everybody and make everybody feel welcome in the universe. That wasn't enough for some of the readers. They decided they wanted to start a fan group. So we have a fan club that is built along the lines of a mercenary organization. And there's the licensing group, and then each little fan group is their own mercenary company. And they get to pick their own uniforms, their own camouflage, their own how they do things. A lot of them have charities they support, that they're all tied into, and that's super cool. For us to know that people are not only cosplaying, the characters and are able to become part of the universe, but they're also taking that to another level and helping make society better through their love of what we're doing. So I think that's just super, super cool.
And that's just kind of spontaneously generated out of the fans looking to connect.
We didn't ask them to do that. They just we did build the Facebook group, but it kind of achieved critical mass, and there were an awful lot of people that were into cosplay. You certainly don't have to be into cosplay to come join us. Don't feel that. But there are a lot who did. Specifically, a lot came from the Royal Manicorn Navy of David Weber's universe. And we're used to wearing uniforms and wanted to and found it cool because now they got to pick their own, rather than having to stay in the one little box and either be one or the other of David Weber's creations. They could design their own uniform, and some of them are a lot better than anything the authors have done. So I saw one guy at a convention, and they have an all black uniform with a purple sash that is just striking. It's I think that the unit proposes to hail from either Central America or South America, so it's got kind of that feel to it. But the sash of purple is just gorgeous. I was like, oh, I want to be in that uniform. I want to join that unit.
Yeah, and that was you saw that at a convention you were at.
Recently. Somebody wore that to a convention I was at. Just to cosplay. Their unit. He had actually been written into one of the books too. So he loved it and wanted to promote the universe to everybody else he knew.
That's cool. That's really cool.
That is.
So why don't you share with everybody where they can find your books and where they can what's coming up and everything else you want them to know about the Four Horseman Universe, or you mentioned the anthology. Maybe share a little bit if you're looking for some more folks to sign up for that.
Sure. Everybody can find anything they want to know about Chris Kennedy Publishing at chriskennedypublishing.com. On the front page, there's all of the books coming out, the next 10 books that are going to be released, as well as the next 10 audio books that are going to be released. We keep that current. You can find out about the authors, You can find out about all of the imprints. There are 5 imprints that do sci-fi, mill sci-fi, urban fantasy, young adult, and fantasy. There's some play in some of those to go a little beyond that. We've got some post-APOC. We've got a couple shared universes outside of the Four Horseman universe. We have a science fiction shared universe called the Salvage Title universe, and a post-APOC called the Fallen World. That both have 6 or 8 books in them now, and there's been some opportunity to write into those universes as well, and there will be more. So, if you're interested in mill sci-fi, post-APOC, check those out, and there'll be future opportunities to write in them. My personal email is chris.kennedy12@gmail.com. If you're looking to write into the open Four Horsemen anthology, shoot me an email and I'll hook you up.
Cool. And is that the only anthology you do, other than you said there was the alt history and then there's the Four Horsemen? Do you have any others?
We've done a number of different ones. We did one on augmented humanity. We've done one with the Salvage Title and one with the Fallen World so far. We've got 3 books in the alt history. Those haven't been open yet. Those have mostly been targeted to certain authors. But I foresee that may be opening on the next one. We may take some folks for the next one. A couple of the anthologies that I've done have been where authors came up and said, "Hey, why didn't you do this kind of anthology?" And I said, "Because you haven't come and asked me until now. Do it." So that's actually how the alt history series started. James Young came to me and said, "Hey, why haven't you done an alternate history anthology?" And I said, "I haven't, because I haven't had time. You set it up and I'll run it with you, and let's do it." And he said, "Okay." And then Jamie Ibsen said, "Well, hey, I'd like to see something on improved mankind." I forget how he approached me with it, but cyborgs and clones and all sorts of different things. Improved humanity. What could we do with that? And I said, "You can do whatever you want. Let's put it together." So we've done a variety of different things, and I'm not afraid to try pretty much anything that's in the box of the imprints that I do.
Yeah. And then if it's not, you'll just make a new imprint, right?
Stranger things have happened. I started out with 1 and now I have 5. So who knows who knows what's next?
Who knows? Stick around and find out.
Actually, Joe knows what's next.
I do, and I'm not saying.
But that's to be revealed Friday. So
all right.
Follow me on Facebook and find out Friday.
Will that be one of your lives with Sheila?
That'll be a live with Sheila.
Yeah. So
that's a special guest.
Bum, bum, bum. Dun, dun, dun. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing all that. I know that there's a lot of folks that you've inspired to write, and also are probably thinking about this, and maybe you've saved them a little heartache.
Well, it's easier to write in an anthology than it is to produce an anthology. You're kidding yourself if you think it isn't, but there's a lot of reasons why you might, and I've found that they've been very worthwhile for us.
Yeah, I think just my observation is it's really nice that folks like you and Craig Martell and some of the other folks that run anthologies do it, because it's a fantastic way for people to cross-pollinate and find new authors and keep the industry alive. So I think it's a cool, not just a way to get some neat stories out, but certainly it's a great marketing tool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It has been, for us. Like I said, it helped, grow the universe for the Four Horsemen and the other two universes that we've done them for. So it's been very useful.
Cool. All right, Chris, good to have you on. We'll be seeing you.
Hey, been great being here. Thanks a lot.
All right.